So hello and welcome everyone to episode 7 of the AHP Preceptorship podcast. We're really delighted to have 2 guests with us today to speak about their experience about preceptorship and to hear a little bit more about their story. So I think it'd be really nice if you could each introduce yourself, tell us what your role is, and are you a preceptee or a preceptor?
Okay. I'm Louise. I'm a band 7. Sorry, am I looking at you or looking at the camera?
You maybe look at us.
Look at you.
Look at us, yeah.
Sorry, Steve. I'm band 7 for the Bromley Learning Disabilities team. I qualified in 2004 from Culture College, which was affiliated with Hertfordshire University. And I did my degree. It was a degree apprenticeship designed for physiotherapy assistants at the time. So it was over 4 years. So I was at uni for 2 days a week, and then I worked as an assistant for 3 days a week.
Oh, so were you originally assistant?
I was originally assistant. I worked for Tower Hamlets Learning Disability Service.
Oh, wow. And when did you start that? Was that
1999.
Oh,
But my degree apprenticeship, so I qualified in 2004, so started in 2000, because it was a 4-year degree.
Oh,
Yeah.
turn of the millennium.
Yeah.
amazing. And Tara?
So I'm a physiotherapist, a band 5 for the Bromley Learning Disabilities team as well. I graduated from the European School of Physiotherapy in 2016.
Amazing.
Lovely.
So both physios, and we've got a preceptee, who's Tara, and preceptor, who is Louise. So our first podcast with both preceptee and preceptor to share their experiences working together, and both got a really interesting story to share. So we always like to hear what led you to become an AHP, or in your case, to become a physio. So if we go to Louise first.
Okay. I kind of fell into physiotherapy. Didn't even know what physiotherapy was before I applied for a job in my local newspaper. I was living in East London, and I had a bit of time. I'd already paid to go travelling for a year. So I was off to Australia, but I had about 3 or 4 months. Saw this job in the local newspaper that was for a fixed term 3-month contract for a physio assistant to help with hydrotherapy, rebound therapy, working in special needs school. And I thought, you didn't have to have experience, but I thought, I love the sound of that. So I did that for 3 years, loved the team, loved the work, I loved the contact, and I liked the variety. I liked being out in the community, so I wasn't kind of stuck in an office. Then I left because the contract came to an end. Off I went travelling, and then I think this was before mobile phones. So I had an email from the team. I think I was about 8 months into my travelling, to say, we've got this opportunity for a degree apprenticeship for physio assistants. We're going to be recruiting around the time I was due back to come home, because I was away for a year. We'd really like you to consider it if you're interested, which I was. So I came back from my travelling, reapplied for my post, was successful, and then went on to do the degree, and here I am. Yeah.
What a journey.
Wow.
I think that's one of the most interesting stories I've heard of entry into physio, and I've just realised you're surrounded by physios today.
I am! I'm outnumbered.
I never make things easy for myself. So at the end of my first year, I fell pregnant.
Oh,
wow.
Wasn't planned,
No.
but he was a lovely addition to my life.
yeah.
So that made it more challenging. It's obviously with placements and doing the work, but also being a new mum. But we got through it.
I feel like it all kind of fell into place for you. It was meant to be.
It was meant to be,
Yeah.
yeah. And as I say, I think I loved my job with the learning disabilities team in Tower Hamlets. Like, I loved it, and I loved the people I worked with. What I hadn't really thought about was when I qualified, I needed to move on because there wasn't a post for me.
Oh, of course.
Hadn't really thought about that part of the... So I think there was an expectation that I may stay with the acute sector. And I guess if I hadn't have fallen pregnant, and because my partner lived in the Midlands, so I was always when I fell pregnant, of course I was going to have to, we kind of discussed, would he move down here or do I move up there? And it just worked that it was easier for me to move up there. If I hadn't have had Xavier, I probably would have done my core rotations. It would have been the Royal London, I think, but I didn't. I moved up and I did my rotations at Wolverhampton Hospital. Loved it there. I loved the acute sector far more than I thought I would because I love the community, but I like the challenges of the acute sector. But then I relocated back down here and came into my role here as a Band 6.
Amazing.
Very nice.
Okay, and Tara, I would love to hear your story.
When I was younger, I played high-level sports, and that also came with a lot of injuries. So I spent lots of time with the physio, either in my hometown or in the sports team, and I got really interested in how the body works and how much they were helping me. So I found out quite early that that was what I wanted to do. So as soon as I finished high school, I applied to be a physio. I was going to be a sports physio because I played sports at quite a high level. And then I did an internship with athletes and absolutely hated it.
It's really funny how sometimes you can have this idea of what you are going to love, and actually in reality it's not the one.
And I feel I can say this because I used to be one of them. Athletes are horrible people. for physiotherapists, not in general. For a physio to work with, they're not good people. They want miracles. They want everything to happen quick. I did an internship in pediatrics in a day center with children with learning disabilities. Fell in love with it, and I knew that was what I wanted to do from then.
Yeah.
So it would be really interesting for you to tell us a little bit about your steps into this first post that you had, obviously working in Oxleas then, and the kind of emotions that went with that, kind of the journey to it. How was that experience for you?
So when I finished my degree, I decided to travel. I didn't have a job, I didn't have a partner, didn't have a house. So I was like, that's it. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it now. So I went to Australia, New Zealand, and then when I met my partner in Australia, he wanted to move back here. I tried getting my degree transferred to Australia, but unfortunately that was not possible due to the amount of work you have to do to get it registered, and I didn't have the money to stay there that long without a job. So I came to the UK with him and started looking for a job here. There's a good connection before Brexit. It was easier to get your degree transferred over to the UK. That was not a problem. I got registered with the HCPC. And then I started applying for jobs. And every single Band 5 post I applied for said that I did not have enough experience to get an interview. I didn't even make it to the interview stages. So I was like, okay, then I'll look for an assistant that at least I can work in the field, even if it's not as a physio. That I can gain some experience. And every Band 2 or 3 I applied for, I was overqualified and they couldn't give me the job. So I was stuck in limbo a little bit there until I saw this Band 4 come up. And I was like, learning disabilities, it's something that I've really enjoyed in pediatrics. So surely I'll enjoy it in adults as well. And I applied for it and I had a really nice interview with Kirsty and Andrew, who I still work with now, and got the job, and here I am.
Louise, did you want to talk a little bit more about actually getting Tara into a Band 5 post?
Yeah, so I was the previous Band 6, and then I successfully recruited into the Band 7 post, and we had an opening. And I think Tara had already been with us for quite some time.
18 months, I think.
18 months. And so I knew she was a great fit for the team. I knew she was passionate about adult learning disabilities, and I knew she would be really interested in the post. So we approached HR to see if we could turn my Band 6 post into a developmental post, but it was a firm no, and there was no really open discussions. So we had to put it out as a Band 6. We put it out twice. We had, lots of applications, but there was only a handful each time we put it out that would be suitable to take to interview. But at the interview process, I think each time we only interviewed 2 people and neither of them had the appropriate skills. So after 2 rounds of putting it out to advert, doing the whole recruitment process, interview process, we then went back to HR to say, look, we've tried to recruit to Band 6 and we can't. We have somebody working in the team who absolutely has the relevant skill set and is keen to develop. Please can you consider turning this into a developmental post? And I guess we also spoke to them at that point about the Preceptorship programme is up and running. So with their support, you know, we think this is an ideal opportunity, particularly given Oxleas values of a fair, you know, we care, we want to develop our staff. And so at that point they agreed. So there was a lot of stuff to do beforehand. But then I think we did have to put it back out to make sure that it was, you know, fair for everybody. But we only had one person apply who was sitting here.
And she was, spoiler, successful. So I suppose that links us on to the next bit then of what were your emotions? Obviously, we know the process of getting you into that job role and the interviews and you know, the kind of HR process, but what were your emotions about starting as a Band 5 into a developmental post? How did you feel?
It's terrifying. But I think because obviously when the Band 7 went up to the Band 8 and then Louise was successful in getting the Band 7, we were a man down. So we had one less person on the team. And I was already doing a lot of the work. I was supporting Louise wherever I could, obviously within the remits of my role at that point as a Band 4. But I was already taking those steps to start into the new role, with the idea in mind that hopefully it would become a Band 5. So when I finally started as a Band 5, I already had an idea of what I had to do. So I'd been working towards that moment for a long time. It was still terrifying.
You still get the fear. But also that, you know, that excitement of it. Yes, I'm finally there. And it's the recognition, I suppose, that comes with that as well. Not that you weren't being recognised for it before, but it's, you know, when you're in the Band 5 post, it's more recognised elsewhere as well, rather than within the team. Perfect.
Amazing. So obviously, you had, when you start within your Band 5 post, you do have challenges. So I guess talking through the main challenges and maybe how you combated these challenges.
So one of the things that I'm the youngest person on the team. And when there's only 10 years between us, but when the other assistants started, both of them are quite a bit older than me as well. And one of the things when I went into my Band 5 post and I was taking the lead was that they would always look at them because they are the older people. So they thought that they were the more experienced one, the higher banding, the people that would give the best advice. And every time I had to be like, it's me.
Kind of redirecting their attention.
So it took... Now that I'm more established in the team, everyone, all the homes that we visit, they know me now. So they know that I'm the one not making final decisions, but that I'm
the qualified
member of staff. And they now listen to me, but initially they would just turn to me, they would look at me and then, is that correct? to the assistant that was standing next to me. So that was quite a difficult thing, but just through perseverance and just keep going. I kept taking the lead, having to pull them back. That was actually one of a very difficult thing to have to deal with. But some of the other things that we mentioned before, time management, being a person down and still having the entire waiting list, and we had a massive influx of referrals just as that happened. So our waiting list was 15 people long,
and they all breached at the same time. So it was really hard to manage.
Multiple breaches at the same time when you're such a small team. You know, it's not like you had a huge team you were the team.
We were the team.
It was the two of
Tara
us
and
for
I.
a very long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And now we've a more established team. So we've got 2 assistants, and we've got a
Graduate
graduate
post.
post
Yeah.
as well. So we've got a full team now, and it's so much easier. But it has taught me a lot about how to effectively manage my time, but also about prioritization. Because we had to sit down and be like, okay, we're not going to be able to do this all between the two of us. So what are we going to do first? What do we need to do right now?
Who
What
are
is
the
urgent?
referrals? Who
And what
wait?
can we go? That can go on the back burner, and once we have more staff, we can revisit that. Where there was any project running, group starting up, they weren't as important as seeing those people first. So we really had to sit down and go through a list of this is what we need to do first, and then we can think about the other things.
Yeah, we had a session this morning about prioritisation and delegation, and that's a huge component for you to be able to adapt, because there's so many challenges, so many things that are going on, especially when, you know, cases are now really complex, and also waiting lists and staffing. You've got to prioritise. You've got to feel comfortable in maybe saying no to things, or like, you know, you're not running your service as you usually should. So
and what's really nice was that you
had
that open conversation, because again, another
Yeah.
part of this session that we do about prioritisation and delegation is actually prioritisation and delegation are some of the skills that are less developed in brand new band fives for a multitude of reasons, you know, maybe lack of experience as a student, or having zero experience, you never mind not having a little bit, maybe having no experience, and a confidence in your experience, because sometimes it comes with time. So it's really nice that you had that kind of group where, you know, the two of you.
There wasn't anyone to delegate to.
And I guess
discuss that openly.
And I think, you know, when I first qualified, and, you know, I had my first post, and I was in a very big teaching hospital. I was put on the rehab. It's called rehab. And I, you know, before I started, I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to be doing proper rehab. And then I remember my first day, I had a really quick induction to the wards, to the team. I think I must have had about 8 or 9 wards that I was covering. And, you know, we would get 20 plus referrals a day that had to be seen within 48 hours. And I remember being given my folder, off you go, on my own. There were some assistants, but they were on other, and I was like, right.
This is it.
This is it. And for me, I think I completed that, you know, I think for the first month, I kept getting lost around the hospital, and you know, my anxiety was through the roof. But I remember at the end of that rotation, you know, my time management was super efficient because I had to learn on the spots. And I always think about what can we do? What can't we do? And then if we're open and honest with the, you know, the people that are being referred to, say, you're on our waiting list, we will aim to see you within this time. You know, that's the way you have to manage it.
You know, the transparency.
Yeah.
And sometimes actually being put into the deep end, it will make or break. It's 100%. It's going to go one way or the other. And what's really nice is you had that support. So kind of just before we move on to Tara's experience of preceptorship, it sounds like you didn't, but did you have any preceptorship or a process of a supportive system when you first started?
So no, there was absolutely nothing like preceptorship, as I say, you know. Well, actually, it was very specific to the rotation. So obviously my first rotation is a brand new, we weren't even called band fives then, I was a junior physio.
Yeah.
See how old I am. So, you know, I had my brief induction, met the team, and there were 2 of us actually on the rehab, but we had different wards. So one was just under surgical, I was on the medical with all the medical outliers. So we were overseen by a clinical lead, but there was nothing like a preceptorship program that Tara has been, that, you know, you've set up. I think, you know, certainly when I did my respiratory rotation and orthopaedic rotation, there was a lot more support because they want you to reach your competencies to get you on the on-call rota.
Oh, of course.
So it was all very rotation specific. And certainly I think one of the great things about the Preceptorship programme is it's open to a multitude of AHAPs. So also, you know, Tara when she was on it, is meeting, sort therapists, occupational therapists, and actually that gives a real insight into their role. So I would be working alongside OTs, didn't really know what they were doing. Or the nature of their role. So no, but we did get, we had supervision. It certainly wasn't as frequent as the 6 weekly supervision that we do. And I guess, when I did see the more complex patients, I could go back to my lead. But it was a bit hit and miss. I loved my time at Wolverhampton. And I think, as you say, you get thrown into the deep end and you either sink or swim. And I guess if I hadn't have relocated back down south, I still might be there because I did grow to love it there. But certainly there wasn't the level of support that there is now.
We definitely, even when we qualified in 2015, 2012?
2010.
There wasn't any real support package. It was just dependent on your team or your supervisor and
I was given an A to Z map, a list of patients, and told, well, there you go. And again, I had supervision and I joined a lovely team, made some friends in that team, which was great. So that did cause me to swim. But, just being given the A to Z map and a list of patients, I kind of lost those months because I didn't really reflect on it. I worked.
This is it.
I
think
did it.
What I remember is, you would get on that hamster wheel and you would not come off that wheel until 4 o'clock. And often, we did get little breaks, and obviously we did have lunch breaks, but it just felt like you were just working full stop without any time to really think about what you were doing. And I think, when I think back to some of those rotations, some were better than others for the support.
There isn't fair and consistency across the board, is there? And that's what we're really passionate about, that everyone has access to the same program, the same means of support from us, and then obviously we're training the preceptors.
And I think the peer support is crucial.
Because we're so individually within our professions, but there's not many of us. But all together we make a huge Oxleas. I think
we make a huge family.
350 AHPs. So
third largest workforce in the NHS, guys.
So let's hear a little bit about your experience with preceptorship then, Tara. I'm guessing, we're hoping that it helps combat some of those challenges.
Like Louise said, it was really good to meet all the other AHPs as well, and get a bit of a feel of what they do and how they experience things. You see, being based in a community is very different to the acute setting as well. So just the different ways of working and the workloads. When I speak to an MSK physio, the amount of clients that they see during a day blows my mind. And I don't understand how they do it, because if we see 4 clients a day, we're huffing and puffing and they're like, we've got so much else to do, and they see 14 or 15 a day. And
I guess in our defence, because it sounds like we don't do anything, we're doing a lot of travel, we do a lot of group work, whereas MSK, they're fixed in one place.
Oh sat in that
cubicle. MSK wasn't for me.
Some people really thrive, but I'm like you, it wasn't for me.
No.
It wasn't for me.
But I really enjoyed just having that chat with other people and just knowing that you're not alone. Everyone's going through the same thing, and it just made it a lot easier. And just having that protected time as well. You're so busy. You start at 8 o'clock and you don't turn off until 4 o'clock, and just being able to take those 2 hours and just turn your brain off from your normal work. Just have that chat and then the short presentation. It just adds to a little bit of enjoyment, just doing a little bit of something different while you're also working. And then also the portfolio, although it is a massive piece of work, it takes a lot of time because it was done in small bits. And especially now that I'm working towards getting my band 6, I have to provide evidence why I'm ready. I already have the evidence, so I don't have to troll back through all my admin and all my notes and what I've done and now write things that happened a year ago, I already have it there, and I just have to be like, I need that, and I need that, and I need that, and then I can just present it the way that I want to.
Absolutely.
And same as you say, it is a huge piece of work, and that's why we do the one-to-ones with people, because we're like, look, we know that it looks like a big portfolio, that actually you're doing these things throughout the year. And did you find by using your everyday work and doing it in snippets, it made the process easier, rather than obviously when you first sit, you think, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was that initial, you see it and you're like, okay. But then with the monthly supervisions with Louise, and we just took it a little bit at a time. We looked at the competencies, and we're like, okay, so these ones, I feel like we've already done those. I just need to write it, so I don't have to worry about them right now. These are the ones that I don't have any idea of yet. So what can our approach be to do that, and just little by little build that. And it was, the team's been really supportive, and I've got all the time that I needed in between. If I had a free half hour, then Louise was happy for me to just spend that time writing up one competency. And just by doing that, by having those tiny breaks in between, it just made it so much easier that, I did still have my bulk hours where all of a sudden I was like, deadline, no. But it wasn't as bad as it could have been if I didn't have those little snippets of time in between.
And I guess, that's one of the joys of working in the community, as opposed to, say, somewhere like MSK, where they are booked out from the time they start to the time they finish. Whereas in the community, we do have much more flexibility. So, if you're on a visit but you've got a bit of a gap, Tara could, as she said, do those chunks of work where perhaps you wouldn't have that same luxury in a different setting.
You'd just be like waiting for DNAs, wouldn't you?
Yeah. That's
but you can't like hope on DNAs to get your work done.
No.
Yeah.
So we also found in the community there was just a bit more time for reflection, like when you're driving from each house, you're like just reflecting on that experience, thinking, what do I have to do when I get back to the office, and what do I have to
and I think that's what we used to do a lot when we went on joint visits. We would always have that reflection
in the car
on our drive back. And we're like, okay, so this happened. What do you think about that? How can we approach this?
I'll do this. You do that. You make that phone call. I'll do this.
Because now we don't work together as much. So we have our supervisions every 6 weeks, but we don't spend that time in the car together anymore. Because we both have our own caseloads. So it's more separate, but now I have those conversations with the assistants that come with me, or if I have a student that I now know how to structure that, or how to have that chat with them during those moments.
I think just going back to the portfolio, I think a lot of preceptees, once they get the momentum going with it, and they're like, they know what the structure is, and they've done a few competencies, then they really get in a role with it, and then they start to enjoy it. It's that initial, isn't it? Like, where do I get started?
And also, I think with some of the competencies, some are, very role specific. So we kind of looked at the areas that you could focus on. But I think a proportion of those competencies is part of your mandatory training. So you're doing it already. So it's not as if you've got to make time to do it, because you've kind of done it or you're doing it.
It's a process of being consciously competent. So that you're actually achieving them. Like you said, we're so busy, it's really important to actually sit down and put it within competencies and structures and think, I am doing that. I am really good at that.
And sometimes it actually takes the preceptor to say to the preceptee, like, the preceptee might go, I don't really know what to use for evidence of that. And that's why it's really nice for preceptees and preceptors to meet, because then the preceptor will go, what are you talking about? You're doing this all the time.
That definitely happened a
Yeah.
few times.
It's like reframing that and actually also providing that reassurance. No, you are doing that. So I suppose moving on from like preceptee preceptor conversations, in terms of your role as a preceptor, Louise, what support was provided for you, and did you feel that any of that support or training adequately prepared you for the process?
So I think I was a little bit late to joining the programme. So Tara had already joined the Preceptorship programme. But for due to other commitments, I couldn't enrol on the Preceptor training. So I was a little bit late to it, but actually having that time where I hadn't done it compared to when I had done it, it was really useful. I think it was really well structured. You know, I don't know if you're doing it face-to-face yet, but I attended online. I thought it was really well structured, and you went through each competency with really great examples. And so it was really useful to kind of know what to expect from Tara. I think probably both Tara and I have a tendency to write a lot. So it was really good with some of the examples when you said, actually, it just needs to be a couple of lines.
Yeah.
We're not looking for essays.
Yes.
What else have I put? About navigating the portal was really useful.
Yeah.
And then I think there was still occasion when I had a panic because I thought I'd deleted all of Tara's work, and I came to you two and I was like, what have I done? You reassured me that I hadn't. And I think you were both really approachable and really responsive. So I know when I emailed you responded really quickly. So I think the whole process was really useful, and you know, the support that you give is fantastic.
Oh, thanks.
Did you like reflecting back to when you first started as well? Because I think we can become like, we go on autopilot, don't we? And we can forget what the emotions and everything that
the
we felt.
imposter syndrome.
We always like to get everyone
Start
back into
there.
that mindset, the preceptors of how was it when you first qualified?
That
What challenges did you
panic.
And I think it's really nice the way that we do that in training for those that haven't attended. Is the first thing. It's like, hello, welcome. This is what we have to do. Right, you're going into the breakout room. Think about your experience because, of course, then the whole thing is structured on the Band 5 experience, and actually we need to remember what it was like for us. Even though times, you know, obviously do change. Like, one of the things that we regularly reflect on is actually when I qualified, and I know it was for a few years, was that the job market was so competitive that actually you were almost kind of viewed as, if you left, you were replaceable.
Absolutely.
So the investment in your settling in, your start process, I know this is a sweeping statement, but it wasn't as supportive because you were replaceable. You knew if you put a job advert out, you'd be getting 100. You had to cap it, and actually sometimes jobs were only open for one day, even because so many people applied so quickly. You're like, right, I've got a shortlist. Whereas now you put a job out for 2 weeks and you don't reach your cap of numbers, and actually it's flipped now. It's not so much that, you know, the Band 5 can't get a job. Actually, in terms of applying for jobs, the competition it's changed a bit.
It's changed.
So actually, I think it's reframed our thinking of somebody isn't just replaceable. Actually, we really want to invest in you and that person and really develop you
and
retain.
retain.
At that time. So I know that when we reflect back to our own Band 5 experiences, it may be slightly different, but I think it's still good that those core emotions are the same. That, you know, the excitement, oh my goodness, I've got a job, I'm qualified. The fear of, oh my goodness, they didn't tell me any of this. And then the imposter syndrome of, oh, I don't think
I
they
still
know
feel like
that.
a student.
Why are they asking me to do this? So I think it's always really nice to think that, because it makes people really realise that everybody felt the same.
Everybody felt the same. And I can remember, it's a good point you made, because, as I say, I qualified in 2004. And when we were all applying my cohort was applying for posts, we were told, this is the first year where some of you might not get a post. And then it just went steadily.
And then that's been...
I think I was the worst year because it did start to pick up after that. But I just remember when we were all at graduation, so we finished in June, we graduated in November, and we were going around going, oh, have you got a job yet? And everybody was like, no. It was like one or two people from a cohort of about 90 of us had a job, and everybody else was working, you know, some way. So I worked on patient transport, which was a thankless task, but it kept me in healthcare.
We had a couple of band 5s when I was already a band 6, still working at Wolverhampton, that had, you know, struggled to find their first post and were working in supermarkets, weren't even in healthcare.
I look back at my cohort now, and we had a lot of people that left the profession.
And
I know that the numbers of that are still high now, but they left the profession because they couldn't get a
different
job.
reasons, yeah.
You know, it wasn't that they started the profession and then left. They just couldn't get a job. You know, I've got people that I qualified with working in finance and their qualifications in diagnostic radiography.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very different. Anyway.
Okay, and then just going on to a little bit about, because Louise, you're also a clinical supervisor, and we have lots of preceptors that are in kind of that joint role. So how did you feel that clinical supervision differed from preceptorship? Because there's this real emphasis on trying to get more AHPs engaged with preceptorship, and a little bit of, not pushback, but, you know, there's already support in place, you know, you've got clinical supervision.
Yeah.
How do you feel that kind of differed?
So I think maybe initially in the early stages we didn't separate it, but then actually, you know, when I thought about it, you know, I think your clinical supervision that we, you know, would have every 6 weeks, it's much more focused on, it's role specific, you know, so we'd be looking at caseloads, service development, you know, performance management of, you know, the other assistants. Whereas once we separated, you know, we'd have a little section at the end where we'd talk about preceptorship, and then I realised actually this is not enough. And I think preceptorship is much more holistic. So instead of looking at role-specific service, this is about the person and Tara's development.
Yes.
Sorry.
I'm going to take a sip of water while
Yeah.
wait a second.
We've definitely found that from preceptors before. They've said it is a much more holistic approach.
Yeah. And I think, so it's much more about looking at the person and developing their skill set and actually making those skills transferable. I think what I really discovered, I think we're both quite reflective practitioners anyway, but I think preceptorship really opens up that opportunities for more reflection. And certainly, you know, when we both first looked at the competency, it was like, whoa. And then, you know, we will kind of look at them, break them down, you know, have a chat. Then Tara would do the piece of work, pop it on the portal. I would have a look, and then, you know, with some of them I used to make little notes and send to you to say, oh, and, you know, we've already touched on it beforehand where Tara would really undersell herself sometimes, and I'd be like, she's not really captured actually all the work she's done. So I would kind of write back or even say to Tara, have you thought about this and this, and do you remember when you did this? And then because of that opportunity for additional reflection, so I think that's one of the key, for me, was one of the key benefits of preceptorship. And then I've already touched on, I think, you know, the other benefit of working alongside other AHPs who you may not necessarily come into contact with, gives you a confidence boost, and just discussing things like, you know, have you done this yet? No, I'm really struggling with this. Where, you know, I think we've got a very good relationship anyway, so I don't think Tara would be worried about approaching me with anything specific, but there may be things that actually she wanted to discuss with one of her peers before bringing it to me. So I think there is a big difference between the two, and I think they should be separated. So we would have a monthly preceptorship meeting that was separate to our clinical supervision.
That is really interesting, because I think people have to find out what works best for them. I think if I was in your shoes, Tara, I think I would have preferred the distinctive, you know,
so you know what you're going into.
Feel like that I had the time focus on both, but I know that some people
and this is it. I think, you know, as a community team, we have that luxury and we can be flexible. I guess not all services have that luxury.
Have to kind of find what works there.
Yeah.
And I think I had that feeling of, if we're going to put it all together in that one 1 hour slot that we have every 6 weeks, then
quite intense.
And I was working so closely with Louise, because it was only the two of us, so we would go to visits together, we would be in meetings together, and then we would have catch-ups together, and we had supervision together, and then also preceptorship onto it. I was just like, that's going to be a lot of time there. Louise must have gotten sick. Louise got sick of me by the time that we finished.
It's really nice to see you two get on. So, Tara, thinking back to your experience of preceptorship, because you've obviously completed now and signed off, so congratulations.
Yeah.
But thinking back to your preceptorship experience, what would you say is your favourite part? What was your, yes, I'm really glad I had that access to that moment?
It was when we went back to face-to-face meetings.
Yeah.
So I am not a fan of networking at the best of times.
Okay.
Let alone when it's online, when you just stare at the screen where there's 3 people opposite you and all 3 of you are like,
Yeah.
so I wasn't a fan of that. Every time that I went to a meeting, that I dreaded that part, having to force that conversation.
Yeah.
But the face-to-face meeting, it was just so much better that you could actually see people, and you get so much more from their facial cues and the intonation, and you can have a chat with someone that's sitting next to you whilst they're having a chat over there. You don't have to have one person talking at a time. But also the way that you guys made little activities to do with the networking rather than just in a room
Talk to
talk.
each other.
Yeah. Preceptee bingo, I think you were talking about. Yeah. We were quite proud of that one.
Yeah. So I think that was one of my favourite things to do. Just go somewhere. So it's time away. Even when you're online, you're still either in your home office, if you have the luxury of having one, or you're in the hospital in a separate room. So you're still at work, whereas this pulls you away from your regular setting, and you sit in a group. You actually see people that you don't normally. I love Louise. She's great. I do like seeing other people around as well.
I suppose, you're such a small team.
Yeah.
That actually, it's...
But we also sit opposite each other.
So it is nice when you see other faces. Oh, I'm pleased. I'm pleased the Preceptee bingo was ahead of you.
I think we had I signed off another Preceptee the other week, and she was talking about the networking in the breakout rooms, and she's like, this was like, it was really outside of her comfort zone. She was like, initially I was like, really didn't like them. But then she's like, now she's signed off, she's like reflecting on it, I'm really happy that I did do it. And I did kind of push myself because I've now gone on to like chair meetings, and I felt just a little bit more confident in that virtual environment where she is chairing meetings, and
especially when you chair a meeting and no one talks back at you.
Yeah.
I guess I think it's one of those things that, not just in preceptorship, but certainly when I've done some online training that's via Teams, and you get sent out to your breakout room, and then, there might be 3 of you, 4 of you if you're lucky, but only 2 of you are contributing. It's really hard.
Yeah, it is hard. Yeah, and you may be the only one contributing, and then you're like,
It won't surprise you that we're normally the ones that are contributing.
But it is good practice to get into that, because obviously, MS Teams or Zoom or whatever virtual platform people use is taking such a dominant role now, that actually love that you love the face-to-face, but also really great practice to have that
get
virtual
comfortable
experience.
with the uncomfortable.
And actually sometimes you have to just let the silence grow and not fill the silence. This is one of my tips to people, is like, if you ask a question or you say something, you don't fill the silence, because you've asked the question. And if you're filling the silence, then somebody's not contributing. It's your anxiety, or potentially feeling uncomfortable, that's answering the question, but that's not the purpose. So good to get practice by.
Yeah, I think that possibly works. I'm just thinking about Tara and I have done a presentation recently on our service. So we did it to an inpatient service, and we've also done it to an external service. One was via MS Teams, one was face to face. The MS Teams was really difficult because not only was it via MS Teams, they didn't put a camera on. So we were presenting to a black space.
Yeah, that's really
and nobody.
uncomfortable.
No engagement.
No camera, no microphone.
Yeah.
So they were chatting. They were typing in the chat while we were doing the presentation.
Yeah.
You can't gauge.
No.
No.
They could have left for all we know.
Yeah.
Just had it on in the background.
It's dealing with that uncomfortable situation. Isn't it?
Okay, and then obviously going on to your relationship with Louise with Preceptorship, how do you feel Louise as your preceptor made a really positive impact? I'm guessing she made a positive impact.
No, I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have the support that Louise has given me. She's always made time for me. She's got a great leadership style. she's always very patient, she's very efficient, she's attentive. Louise is a lovely person, and she's really given me what I need, and I hope that if I am in a similar situation later on, that I can take some of that forward as well.
Oh, that's so lovely. Thank you.
A little bit, actually, a little bit.
Have your tissues?
No, I'm turning red.
No, that's really really lovely.
really lovely.
Yeah, very articulate as well. Really nice.
And I guess on to Tara, how do you feel that Preceptorship really supported Tara? Do you really feel like it provided some skills enhancement, or do you feel it was more the holistic approach? Do you feel?
I mean, I think Tara is very efficient with her time management. So although when she first joined and we looked at all the competencies and it was overwhelming, because I know how Tara works, I knew that it wouldn't be a problem because we'll break it down into workable tasks, bite-sized chunks. But I think very early on we decided, and I think I'd spoken to you about making sure Tara had protected time, because not only is Tara with our team, she also spends one day at Bromley College, which is term time only. So I knew actually there's a lot going on for Tara. She's got her role at the college, role in the community. So I just wanted to be very clear that we need to make sure she's got protected time so it doesn't become overwhelming. I think, we've got a great way of communicating. So, I know if there's a problem, Tara's going to tell me. And likewise, if I, think there's an issue, I feel comfortable talking to Tara about it. But again, I think for me, looking at the competencies, I felt there were some areas that was really useful for Tara to kind of home in on and to really get those skills to build her confidence. Because although Tara comes across as somebody that's very confident, underneath that there's a very soft side, and she worries a lot. And as we all do, as you say, when we first qualified, I think I certainly worried that I was doing the right thing, doing the wrong thing, making a good impression, just because of that inexperience. When you're newly qualified, you don't have that professional experience that comes with time. We've touched on, Tara would often undersell herself. So she would just need that reassurance, say, actually, sell yourself a bit more because you've got those skills now. And certainly one of the other examples that I can think of is, we are a specialist service and we do a lot of assessments for specialist equipment to support the people we work with. And normally what we have to do is we identify that there might be a specialist piece of equipment, we'll get a rep out, and then we have to do a clinical reasoning process to apply for funding. And I remember in those, very early stages, Tara would always seek approval from myself or from Kirsty, who's our Band 8, whereas towards the end of her finishing, she's just doing that without even asking for support or advice, within the wording. So I think, she's really excelled in those clinical reasoning skills that's needed for our role.
Oh, very nice.
And you think Preceptorship really aided that, do you?
I think so. I think if the Preceptorship hadn't have been in place, obviously I think there would have been more time needed on my part to spend with Tara to gain those skills. So I don't know if you agree with that, but I think certainly Preceptorship has supported that process.
Yeah, I think for me it highlighted those things that I wasn't sure about, and then having those conversations, it's like, oh, actually, that does make sense, but just in my mind I hadn't drawn that conclusion. So if it wasn't for those meetings, then
and that
who knows when that would have come up.
Yes.
And I think perhaps without the Preceptorship it would have taken longer for Tara to get that confidence to actually think, I do know, and I do have the confidence to clinically reason and to document that clinical reasoning to justify the need for this piece of equipment.
Yeah,
perfect.
And also it's just because you're such a small team, you could have maybe overthought quite a lot, and where you weren't sharing those, if you weren't sharing those experiences with other Band 5s, you might have been like, am I the only one that feels like this? And then that can have a real big impact on your confidence and how you are at work, and
the imposter syndrome.
You're like, you could have just really got yourself in a bit of a vortex. And
can I just say, when I did your one-to-one, you definitely showed yourself as somebody who was, very confident. You certainly didn't show me any kind of worrying signs of that imposter syndrome. So I know what you're saying, Louise, going back to, you're very good at the communication, but also very good at being like, yes, I am confident, which is a really great thing to have.
Yeah.
But I can remember walking away from the one-to-one just to say, and I went back to the office and it was like, she's one-to-one. And you definitely have been.
Yeah.
Tara, would you recommend preceptorship to somebody else? And if anybody's listening to this that's going into their first post or is in their first post, what would your top tips be to them?
So, yeah, I would definitely recommend it. Like we touched on it before, just having that moment away from your day-to-day, this is what I'm doing, just stepping away from that and having that chat with other people that are going through the same thing that you are. Because yes, Louise has gone through this back when she qualified, but things have changed since then, and she's been in her role for 10 plus years. So she knows how things go and what needs to be done. But it was really nice to have that chat to other people that are in my situation, that haven't been in their role for such a long time, that you can at least have that conversation. Even if you don't chat much, you can just sit back and listen, especially in the face-to-face sessions, a bit more than in the breakout rooms. But you can just sit back and listen to other people's experiences, which is very helpful as well. And I think for me, what I didn't quite realise until the very end, it was one of the last sessions I did, where we were in a breakout room and we were talking about, it was something that the others couldn't discuss because they were in an office with people they worked with.
Was this the elephant task? The elephant in the room?
Yes, I think that was it, yeah.
The CIA, maybe?
Yes, that's the one.
Yes. Yeah.
And they couldn't talk about anything because they didn't want anyone to overhear something and misinterpret what they overheard. So we just chatted about the portfolio instead. And I'd gotten to a point where they were asking me what I'd done and I could actually give advice. And I was just, after the session, I was like, what happened there? It's just such a...
You took on a bit of a mentor.
It was just, I hadn't realised how much I had done and that I could make that impact for others to just tell them what I'd done. So that was a really big turning point for me.
And I think you've just hit on a good point as well, because you're the only band 5 in our team. And sometimes, it is a confidence thing of you don't want to look stupid. You want to look like you know what you're doing. So perhaps having those discussions with other band 5s that are in the same boat are easier, and actually then kind of give you more confidence to say, actually, although I felt anxious and I wasn't sure, I'm on the right track.
And we are very open about our experiences as well. Like, we like to say that we are just open and honest and very transparent. And the session that we did this morning as well, someone was just like, oh, that's really reassuring to hear that you also struggled with that. So it's nice hearing it from those that are a bit more experienced. We went through the same thing. We struggled and
it's part of that learning process, isn't it?
And it's like, you will come out the end of it. You will, you had that real
that turning point.
That's great to hear. And just a little bit as a preceptor, do you feel that it helped develop you in any way?
I guess because I've been in my post for so long, I think I wouldn't say I'm a control person. Maybe I am a little bit. And I know I have a tendency, certainly if we've done assessments and Tara said, I really want to lead this, I have a terrible tendency to jump in and say, no, we're going to do this. Oh, sorry.
So I feel like there's a real physio tendency, can I just say, because I'm exactly the same.
Louise has got an amazing mug. Remind me to show you a photo of it after.
So I think definitely it's developed my skills to kind of more coaching skills. So instead of giving the solutions, to kind of ask more questions, to say, okay, this is the problem. What else do you think you could do to solve that?
But I think AHPs, all of us, we're solution based.
Yes.
We are professional problem solvers,
Yeah.
just in different areas, you know. So obviously podiatry, you're a problem solver of, you know, foot and lower limb conditions and all of these kind of things.
Constantly jumping to the solution.
So we like to be solution focused because we're problem solvers. So actually, it's really nice to hear that you've taken on more of a coaching as much as that may have been frustrating as well at moments, Tara. Yeah, actually, really nice that it's reframed your kind of
And I think
teaching skills.
what I'm doing, so correct me if I'm wrong. So, you know, when we would have our preceptorship meetings, I would try and take that step back and think, okay, let's have a think about what do you think and what other measures can you put in place? And I think I'm beginning now to incorporate that more in our supervisions when you come to me with tricky situations. Whereas I probably still do, if I'm honest. I might jump in and say, right, okay, let's do this. I might say, have you thought about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's reframing it.
Yeah.
Wow. And lastly, as we have such a wonderful partnership here, what do you feel the main components to a really successful preceptorship journey or partnership with Preceptee and Preceptor? What do you think are the key components?
I actually came up with very different answers to this
Oh,
one.
interesting.
Okay. Shall I go first?
There you go.
So let's get the Preceptor perspective.
I think for me it was making sure there's protected time
Yeah.
to focus on the preceptorship. I think time management and planning is key, and I didn't really even need to help you with that. You're very good at doing that. Communication, so being open and transparent,
So important.
and keeping those lines of communication open. And then support from you.
Aww.
And I think, I think from my side, I'm the lead clinician of my team supporting Tara, but actually having a different support network for Tara was beneficial for Tara, but also for me as well.
Yeah,
Really
outside of the teams,
Outside
outside
of
of
the
team
team,
dynamics.
yeah.
I think that's what we've found with many teams we've worked with. It's just an outside voice is so important.
And sometimes it's just nice to be able to run something
Yeah,
past someone and then
yeah.
go, oh yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, even if, you know, it's not a clinical decision, but actually in terms of like the structure of something, actually just nice to have reassurance of somebody who's not within the team.
Not involved,
Yeah. Really nice.
Oh,
Thank you.
that's lovely. Okay.
And so what was the Preceptee perspective of that, Tara?
So mine were, you need a supportive preceptor.
Yes.
Someone that
Absolutely.
Dick.
Yeah.
does everything that helps you
Yeah.
when you need it, but also is happy to take that step back if you don't need it.
Yeah.
As a preceptee, you need to be very proactive and
Yeah.
make these plans and get these things done.
Yeah.
Flexibility. So protected time is a part of that, but even if you don't have the protected time per se, where can you swap your day around a little bit, or do you have a little gap that you can use? You have to be quite flexible to make sure that you can get everything done.
Yeah.
And my last one was creativity as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And can I just say your portfolio was also full of creativity. We still
Chef's
talk
kiss. Yeah.
about how impressed we are by your portfolio, I'd say on a weekly basis. It crops
Should we,
up weekly.
should we circle back to Tara?
Yeah. Those are really, really
Yeah.
I love those points.
Yeah.
Really nice to hear the
Different perspectives.
perspectives together.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I think
I was just going to say, is there anything else that you feel like you want to mention or to add? If not, then that's fine. If you feel like you've got everything.
I actually just thought of something. When I did the observed practice, Hannah came over to watch me, and that was a really nice experience for me as well, because it was someone from outside the team that was giving me feedback on how I was doing, rather than having the same people that...
Yeah.
It's great to hear that I'm doing a good job, but it's nice to hear from someone else says the same thing as well.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, I actually really enjoyed that experience as well. So I'm glad.
She was like, I really want to put some really good feedback. I'm going to really spend time on this.
I did. I spent a good chunk of time on that feedback.
I put it on Louise's desk for the next morning when I got it.
We haven't touched on your endorsements either. You had an incredible endorsement section in your portfolio.
Yes, well done.
And that was a letter from one of your patient's parents, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That sadly passed away, but you know, they were reflecting on that huge impact that you had on not only the patient but the whole family. And that was really touching.
Really
to read.
touching.
And that's so important to also incorporate within your preceptorship, because we always say very regularly in the NHS, very easy to focus on the complaints your team are getting or just the negativity, and so important to hold on to those compliments and those endorsements that you get, because
And the thank yous, just because
it can go a long way.
we were actually also saying this morning, a thank you doesn't cost anyone anything, but is sometimes like not given freely. So actually a thank you, you'll hold on to that for years. And we were talking about it in terms of when you delegate something to someone, actually just to remember to say thank you. But actually thank yous are free, but aren't given freely. So
and the fact they took the time to write a letter, send that in, like, it's a huge
credit to you.
Yes, that's the word.
Actually, in preparation for my portfolio, I was going through some of my old stuff as well, and I found a letter from my placement instructor from when I did pediatrics, and I just read it back because it was just after the placement. She was like, if you want to get a job, here's a letter of reference from me. And it was so nice to read that back and just to have that.
And you'll read those for years to come.
Yeah.
I found mine when I was moving house. I forgot that I had them, and I read them back and had a cup of tea, and actually I was like, oh, I was really good at my job.
Yeah.
Just nice to remember.
Because we can get lost sometimes in the chaos of short staffing
and the stresses,
or like if you've had one of those days, if you ever have one of those days, just please reread
just
that
read
letter.
Oh my gosh, it's a good point to add.
It was perfect.
Right, so I think we'll round up there.
Thank you.
Yeah, amazing. So thank you so much for sharing your experience, but also both of you just really like embracing the preceptorship experience. And it's both of you, like you were this first time being a preceptor, Louise, and obviously first time with preceptorship journey, and it's just amazing to hear that you had such a great relationship with it, and you really went with it. I think because it is so new for everyone, some can shy away from it a little bit and maybe not engage with it, but you really went with it, and it's a really great story to share. So
thank you.
Thank you very much. And remember, guys, if you need any more preceptorship information, check out our website. But thank you for listening. Thank you to Louise and Tara for joining us. And we hope that you join us for the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.